Hello everybody, Giltar here with another plastic model review. This time it's going to be of the 1 to 100 scale full action RX-93 Nu-Gundam. Now, I mentioned this previously in my preview video about this model kit. Basically, just a quick rundown that it's basically a 16-year-old model kit. I think it came out in the first month of 1994. I've had this model for years, but I've only rediscovered it recently. So yeah, I've put this model together, and right away what I'll say is that the age of the design does show. First of all, the plastics used I don't think are significantly different. I'm sure the plastic, sort of like the recipe that goes in for the plastic moldings that Bandai uses these days is different, improved. But one of the things I've noticed is that first of all, the parts are cast in sort of thinner proportions. All the pieces are thinner than even what I would find in a high-grade model kit these days, especially with the white parts, which even in normal high-grade and maybe some master-grade model kits, they will allow a bit of light through if you were to put it beneath a flashlight or a lamp or something. But especially these parts on the Nu-Gundam here, on the white pieces, it doesn't even take intense light. It could even be something as simple as light coming through a window, and if it hits at the right angle, you can see through like the hip skirt or something like that. So that's one thing I did notice. Another thing about this model kit is that all the joints are straight pegs. There's no ball joints, and it's all polycaps. So one thing about this model kit that I'm sort of wary about is the fact that it probably can get loose and will get loose over time. And because everything's on a straight peg, once something gets loose, it's going to fall right out easily. One thing I did also mention during my preview video is that it does come with die-cast metal parts. I mistakenly thought the leg parts were supposed to be placed in the thighs, so I actually voiced some concerns about balance issues. I was totally wrong. They actually go into the calves, like the big metal die-cast metal pieces go in here. There's one that goes into the pelvis, and then there are two that go into the shoulders. So they're actually, especially for the legs, they're actually really necessary for balance, because the fin funnel unit back here, if it didn't have those die-cast metal parts in the calves, I'm pretty sure that it would be very difficult to balance. And even right now, you do have to position the Nu-Gundam in a certain way to balance it properly without it sort of tipping over. And considering that, I guess the relative fragility of this model kit compared to more modern ones, you don't want this to be falling, especially under its own weight, because I can imagine parts of this snapping off pretty easily, unfortunately. Especially due to the large amount of white plastics. I think it's probably made of polystyrene. They're soft, so they're easy to damage. So just to start off this review, in terms of the model itself, let's go into the accessories. What we see here is in its right hand is a beam rifle. Pretty basic. It's composed of 4 parts. The blue part here are 2 halves that snap together, and then you snap together the white parts over them to form the beam rifle. The beam saber here is actually one single molded part. As I mentioned in my preview video, I'm not going to paint or apply any of the stickers to this model because I want people to see what you pretty much get out of the box without doing extra work and detailing. There's a shield on its left arm that is white plastic on the outside, and then it has dark blue plastics, and I guess these are shells for the hyper bazooka, maybe in here. It actually just clips onto the forearm. Well, that's difficult to get off. So it just clips onto the forearm. It can rotate. Yes, the wing or fin funnels on the back here. I'll just remove them because they're kind of in the way. There's a peg on the back here, and wow, with the beam saber. There's a peg on the back of the backpack here on this drum that you just put into one of these slots, and it rests there on gravity and friction, basically. The fin funnels they have articulation for the joints, but one problem is, and I mentioned it and I'll show you right now, it uses straight pegs into polycaps, so they're not tight at all. They're not extremely loose, but they're loose enough so that just by simply bending it, sometimes they'll just pop off. So that's one strike against this design, is that it uses straight pegs exclusively into polycaps. On the back we have the Hyper Bazooka, and there's a peg on the back, and it slots into this rectangular section in the middle of the backpack here. You might notice that it only has one set of dual thrusters. The other set, and again due to the straight peg system, the other set actually goes in here, these thrusters, but no matter how hard or firm I put them in, they eventually pop out for some reason. I don't have to do anything, they'll just fall out. So at a later point I plan on gluing these in after I give this a model a paint job. So that's the Hyper Bazooka. This is made up of several pieces. The handle's one piece, the main barrel component's two pieces, the cartridge and sort of exhaust port back here is two pieces, that, you know, they're two halves, and then this rack of shells are a single molded piece. Unfortunately, you can only see like the front and back of them. Inside they actually are individual shells that look like they're just all clipped together, so it's a pretty nice detail that unfortunately you will never see once it's assembled. The handle can flip out. One part about this model is that while the beam rifle fits in pretty well, and the beam saber, just due to the design of the handle for the Hyper Bazooka, it just doesn't fit too well into the hand. There's nothing to grip it, so you kind of have to hold it up and as best you can have it rest. But any jostling, even if you tighten up the articulated hands, I mean, it falls out. So that's too bad. But once you get it into, you know, a nice resting position, as long as nothing bumps into it too hard, it'll stay in there. But not too bad. I mean, it's not the greatest detail, but again, it's a 16-year-old kit. It came out in the first of 1994, so I'm keeping that in mind when I do this review. While I'm here, I'll show off the hand articulation. The thumb is stationary, but the index finger is actually separate and can swivel back and forth. The middle finger, ring finger, and pinky fingers are grouped in one, and they swivel too, so you have some hand articulation for both hands. And actually the right forearm storage for the beam saber can pop up, and you can take the beam saber out. So it's just a beam saber hilt. There's no extra beam blade components, so it's not like you can plug anything else in here. So it's basically just an accessory, cosmetic. But it's pretty neat. It's there, and you know, what can you say? And also there's another beam saber in the back here that fits into the top. Again, it's just the handle fits in here, and this does have articulation. You can rotate it to this degree. Oh, it just popped off. What I'll mention right now actually is that this is a snap together model kit, but due to the way that a lot of parts are a little more, I guess, finicky and fiddly, you might want to, if you ever get a hold of this, that is, I mean, it's an old model. The only reason why I have it is that my uncle bought it for me like 12 years ago or 13 years ago. If you do get a hold of this model or any other, I guess, the full action 1 to 100 scale models, if there are more, is that be aware that you might have to do some extra work afterwards to make sure the pieces are secure. So yeah, that's it for accessories and their bits of articulation there. I'll remove the beam rifle from the hand so you can get a look at the rest of the model kit. Now in terms of the overall articulation for the mobile suit, the Nu-Gundam, it is fairly limited. It's not terrible, but you know, high-grade models, even among the first high-grade models, are probably, actually, yeah, they're better than this in terms of articulation. So, for example, the arms are pretty standard. They go 360 degrees. It only rotates at below the elbow. And again, these are all polycap joints I'm dealing with. Rotates at the hand. But the hand itself can bend pretty significantly, so that's pretty good. You can get like a 90-degree bend at the wrist. And again, the fingers are articulated. The legs themselves, you can only bend the leg about that far. The ankles can bend this way and that way, so it can only bend about that far ahead and back, bit side to side. The hips themselves and the front skirt armor are independent. They can move separately. You get some swivel movement and rotational movement. They can only go about that far ahead. The back skirt's actually a single piece, but they can move. Can go that far back. So it looks like I'm almost out of time for this part, so I'll be back with the rest of articulation in part 2. Thanks for watching.